They recorded an album that blended psychedelia with riffs that cut like a knife, and no one distributed it beyond their hometown. Another band filled theaters with a sound many now mistake for Led Zeppelin, yet they never signed with a major label. While the world was singing along to Queen and Pink Floyd, these 13 bands were crafting anthems from the shadows. They were visionary, explosive, and ignored. Too risky for the market, too brilliant to vanish. This is a journey through the hidden gems of 70s rock, bands that gave it everything, only to be left behind by time. Until now. Imagine this. Rod Evans, fresh out of Deep Purple after singing Hush, joins forces with two former Iron Butterfly members, Larry Reinhardt and Lee Dorman, along with drummer Bobby Caldwell. That is how Captain Beyond was born. In 1972, they released a debut album that still sounds like a trip into the future. Their music is a sonic kaleidoscope, hard rock, psychedelia, and progressive elements blended with surgical precision. Tracks like Dancing Madly Backwards launch you into a cosmic roller coaster. Even the album's revolutionary holographic cover couldn't boost its commercial performance. They toured with Alice Cooper and Quicksilver Messenger Service, and even sparked a riot in Hollywood due to the madness of their fans. But internal issues and label conflicts brought them down by 1977. Evans vanished from the public eye, becoming a rock mystery that remains unsolved. Despite their short lifespan, Captain Beyond left a deep mark on both musicians and fans. Their music has been cited as a direct influence by modern stoner rock and progressive metal bands, including Mastodon and Opeth. Their ability to shift tempo and atmosphere without losing flow was revolutionary, turning their debut into an almost cinematic experience. This was a band made to be understood decades later. From Switzerland, a land more famous for its watches and chocolate, came something entirely unexpected in 1969. Toad, a power trio bursting with raw energy, with Vic Vergit on vocals and guitar, Werner Froelich on bass, and Cosimo Lampis on drums. Their debut was an all-out explosion. Cottonwood Hill hits like a runaway blues rock freight train. Albums like Tomorrow Blue and Dreams followed, just as intense, though they never saw mass commercial success. They toured across Europe, earned praise from legends like Jack Bruce, and recorded with Martin Birch, the future Deep Purple engineer who would later shape the sound of Iron Maiden. One of the greatest injustices faced by Toad was the lack of proper distribution outside Europe. While German krautrock was gaining global attention, Swiss hard rock was practically invisible, despite having a strong scene. Toad could have stood shoulder to shoulder with UFO or Budgie, but geographic isolation and weak international backing left them relegated to cult status. The band disbanded in 1998, but today, their debut album sells for hundreds of dollars on collector markets. Vergit kept playing and even collaborated with David Hasselhoff. Rock legacy or an absurd joke? Let us know what you think in the comments. Bang was born in Philadelphia as a foreshadowing of doom metal, before that term even existed. Their 1972 debut sounds like a blazing mix of Black Sabbath and street-level grit. Dark lyrics, heavy riffs, and a defiant attitude define their sound. Despite their forward-thinking vision, they were derailed by bad label decisions and internal conflicts. They never had a hit, but their self-titled album became a cult favorite among proto-metal fans. Today, they are recognized as pioneers of a sound that would only take full shape years later. Strangely enough, Bang recorded more material than was ever released at the time. Several recordings were shelved by the label without explanation, something that deeply frustrated the band. In the 2000s, original members like Frankie Gilkin and Tony Diorio began to revive the group, reissuing lost material and playing cult festivals. The rebirth of Bang has become a long overdue vindication of a band that simply arrived too early for their own time. From Cleveland, Granicus struck like lightning in a storm. In 1973, they recorded their one and only album in just 2 weeks for RCA. The result was a hard rock bombshell, laced with progressive touches, aggressive riffs, and the mind-blowing voice of Woody Leffel, so powerful that studio engineers thought the recordings were faked. They never sold much, but they shared stages with Bob Seger and left a mark that would later resurface through reissues and vinyl cult status. In their short-lived existence, Granicus also fell victim to RCA's unrealistic expectations. The label had no idea how to promote a band so aggressive and experimental. Rumors say they were pressured to soften their sound for a second album that never happened, which only caused more internal tension. They burned out quickly, but their legacy still roars in the shadows.
Imagination must.
A group of British musicians exiled in Germany gave birth to Nectar, a band with a mission to launch rock into space. Their debut album, Journey to the Center of the Eye, is a 42-minute psychedelic rock opera about an astronaut on an interstellar voyage. With Roy Albright as the captain on guitar and vocals, and Taff Freeman crafting immersive soundscapes on keyboards, they built otherworldly sonic landscapes that felt like they were pulled from another dimension. Remember, The Future became their most successful release, reaching number 81 in the United States. They performed alongside Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, lighting up stages with visually stunning shows that defied logic. Nectar was not just a rock band, it was a full audiovisual experience. During their tours, they used synchronized projections to visually narrate the stories their songs told, something rare outside of Pink Floyd. The band split in the 70s, but returned decades later, proving that their sound remains timeless. Modern bands like the Mars Volta and Porcupine Tree have cited Nectar as a key influence in combining visual storytelling with music. From Nova Scotia, April Wine kicked off in 1969. Gradually refining their sound until they hit their peak with The Nature of the Beast in 1981. Though they became household names in Canada, filling stadiums and earning multiple gold certifications, they never received the global recognition they truly deserved. Tracks like Just Between You and Me broke into the top 25 in the United States, and they toured with giants like Rush and Styx. They were even the first Canadian band to be syndicated in the United States. Their biggest international hit, Just Between You and Me, opened many doors, but it also labeled them as a soft rock act, causing many to overlook their harder, heavier roots. Songs like I Like to Rock and Roller showed they could hold their own with any hard rock band of the era. Still active in 2025, April Wine remains a late-blooming gem of melodic hard rock, continuing to play and release music with the same spirit that started it all. Can true rock survive even when it's off the mainstream radar? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. When it comes to bands that broke boundaries before their time, Sir Lord Baltimore is right at the top. This New York trio released Kingdom Come in 1971, an album so loud, raw, and unhinged it predicted stoner rock decades ahead. Guitars on the verge of collapse, blazing drums, and a voice screaming at the edge of the apocalypse, they were too intense for their era. Even Led Zeppelin acknowledged their power, but the industry had no idea what to do with them. What's most fascinating about Sir Lord Baltimore is that their studio fury was only a glimpse of what they unleashed live. At some shows, they were known to open with 5 minutes of pure noise before even starting a song, just to provoke the audience. Years later, drummer and vocalist John Garner resurfaced with a new version of the band, this time leaning toward Christian rock, a move that took many by surprise and divided their cult following even further. May Blitz was a power trio that roared briefly between 1969 and 1971. Led by Jamie Black, their self-titled debut in the 2nd of May delivered a potent mix of heavy blues and bold psychedelia. The track Smoking the Day Away stretches nearly 8 minutes of hypnotic groove. They played legendary venues like the Marquee Club in London, where the walls shook under the force of Tony Newman's drumming, a former member of the Jeff Beck Group. There are unofficial recordings of May Blitz performing extended versions of their songs, which some fans argue surpass the studio cuts. As a trio, they proved that volume and complexity could go hand in hand with raw impact, but their sound was too experimental for the mainstream of their time. Newman would go on to play with David Bowie, but May Blitz remained a buried treasure for the most curious rock explorers. From Boulder, Colorado, Zephyr blended power, virtuosity, and tragedy. Fronted by Candy Gibbons, whose voice could melt steel, and featuring guitar prodigy Tommy Bolin, they released their debut in 1969 with tracks like Cross the River, a full-force blues rock inferno. Bolin would later go on to play with James Gang and Deep Purple. Zephyr, however, became a victim of their time. Too raw for commercial radio, too unpredictable for the traditional blues circuit. Though Candy Gibbons never received the recognition she deserved, many musicians regard her as one of the most raw and influential female voices in American rock. Sadly, she spiraled into personal struggles and died of an overdose in 1984. With her, Zephyr faded, but their legacy still burns for those who discover their sound today. Do you think the band would have reached success if Candy had lived?
That wasn't quite all.
Wild Turkey was born from a split. Glenn Cornick, original bassist for Jethro Tull, wanted a grittier sound. He gathered musicians like Gary Pickford Hopkins, and together they crafted a style that fused hard rock, blues, and a psychedelic edge. Battle Hymn was their debut statement, and while they never climbed high on the charts, they left behind gems like Good Old Days, a track that deserves airplay on any rock station today. One of Wild Turkey's biggest draws was their unpredictable live energy. They never played a song the same way twice, often stretching tracks into improvised jam sessions. Fans loved it, but it made them a tough fit for commercial radio. Still, their live reputation grew. They toured with Yes and Jethro Tull, and partied like legends along the way. They disbanded in 1975, but their name still echoes among collectors and connoisseurs of underground rock brilliance. They started as restless teenagers in London and evolved into a ferocious prog rock band with thundering riffs. Stray, led by guitarist Del Bromham, released albums like Suicide and Mudanzas, filled with raw energy and dense, melodic power. They never charted, but built a loyal following through intense live shows, opening for Black Sabbath and tearing up the Reading Festival in 1972 before 50,000 people. Stray didn't just survive the years, they outlasted the trends. In the 80s and 90s, while many of their peers either adapted or faded, Stray stayed true to their sound, playing small venues, underground festivals, and biker clubs with the same conviction. Today, Del Bromham still performs, keeping the flame alive for a band that time never managed to extinguish. Tucky Buzzard had a heavyweight patron from the start. Bill Wyman, bassist of the Rolling Stones, served as both manager and producer. Their sound was a mix of blues, hard rock, and a whole lot of groove. Tracks like Warm Slash and All Right on the Night showcased their studio punch and live firepower. Having Bill Wyman in their corner was a double-edged sword. While it gave them access to top-tier studio resources, it also drew unfair comparisons to the Stones. Critics often dismissed them as sounding too similar, which sadly overshadowed their own musical identity. Though they shared stages with Deep Purple and Grand Funk Railroad, Tucky Buzzard never broke through commercially. They disbanded in 1974, but their music remains one of the best-kept secrets of the Stones era. We close with a gem worth its weight in gold. Leafhound. In 1971, they released Growers of Mushroom, an album so dense, wild, and psychedelic that it laid the foundation for stoner rock. It was recorded in just 11 hours, on a budget so tight the band barely had time to mix. Yet the result was so powerful that, decades later, many stoner rock bands cite it as a foundational influence. Peter French, the band's vocalist, would later perform with Atomic Rooster and Cactus, but it was with Leafhound that he left his rawest, most defining mark. The album was released in limited quantities, with no promotion, and quickly faded into obscurity. Until the 2000s, when the band had an unexpected rebirth, French reunited a new lineup and returned to the stage, playing specialized festivals where he was welcomed as a resurrected legend. Today, Growers of Mushroom is a sacred relic for those who seek out what history nearly erased. Sometimes, rock history is written in neon lights, and other times, it's written in invisible ink. These 13 bands may not have filled stadiums like the giants of their era, but they left behind a legacy just as powerful. They were brave, creative, and often misunderstood, pushing sonic boundaries with no fear of failure. And even if the mainstream turned its back on them, their music remains, waiting to be rediscovered. Because if there's one thing these hidden gems teach us, it's that greatness doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it just needs a second listen, or a video like this. Now it's your turn. Did you already know any of these bands? Or did you just find your new musical obsession? Which band would you swap out of the ranking to make room for your favorite? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you and see your take. If you enjoyed this sonic journey, give it a like and leave a comment. It helps the video reach more people and keeps us inspired to share more untold stories of rock. See you in the next episode.